The Kandahar hijacking of IC814 was one of the most horrific acts of terror to take place in recent memory. Some of us are old enough to remember it well, and it is among the assignments that we have reported. So, why is a new Netflix series on this hijacking creating the kind of storm that it has? Why has the Modi government summoned the content head of Netflix as a growing storm hits the web series, some loving the series, and some saying it's guilty of whitewashing terrorism from Pakistan? I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. Our focus today is on a web series that is rooted in real life, the hijacking of IC814, a hijacking that led to the release of three of the most dreaded terrorists in Indian prison, including the Jaish-e-Mohammed head Masood Azhar, Omar Sheikh, and Mushtaq Zargar. The debate has continued for many years. Was there another option but to release these men? Why was the hijacked plane allowed to take off from Amritsar? Is there something else that India could have done? Releasing terrorists is no easy decision for any state. But when confronted with the safety of your passengers, there are no good choices either. A new Netflix series is a fictionalized account of this real life act of horror and terror. But it has created a veritable storm, so much so that the Modi government summoned today the content head of Netflix and gave them a talking to about how the nation's interest sentiments, quote unquote, have been hurt. How do we look back at what happened? How do we look at the truth of what unfolded at that moment? And should we be holding a fictionalized series to the kind of account and scrutiny that we are doing today? To talk about this and more, let's introduce a very special panel today, a special panel because it actually has somebody who has seen what happened as a real life survivor of that ordeal. And I want to introduce Anil Sharma. Sharma was the chief of cabin crew on board that flight. And if anybody knows what he's talking about, it's him. He's also written a book of his account of what happened. Thank you, Mr. Sharma, for being here and for sharing your story. I know it isn't easy, no matter how many years pass. Also joining us is one of India's finest film critics, Shubhra Gupta. Shubhra, it's good to have you with us. Military veteran General Katoch is back with us. Welcome to the program as always, sir. Always a pleasure. Also joining us is Sanjay Lazar. Sanjay is somebody who has been an author who's worked with Air India for many years, but actually he's also a victim of aviation terrorism. He lost his entire family to the bombing that took place on board the Kanishka aircraft. A different context, but somebody who knows what terrorism and what losing someone to terrorism feels like. So welcome back, Sanjay. And also joining me is my old colleague and friend, Maya Mirchandani. She's been a senior journalist and is now a professor at the Ashoka University. Welcome to all of you. And I must start with Mr. Anil Sharma, with also the caveat and the disclaimer that I have not seen the series, and this is not only about Netflix or some other movie that may come, but for you as someone who survived that ordeal, who looks back, some of the questions from that time have never been answered. Mr. Sharma, I don't know if you've had a chance to see the series. If you have, do you understand why so many people are so upset? How do you look at it as the only person on this program who was actually there living out that nightmare? Anil Sharma ji.
Good evening, Barkha ma'am. Yes, I've seen the series. Just short of half a episode, and truly speaking, there have been a lot of portions which have left me severely disappointed and even bewildered. That how can so much truth be distorted? I know what is coming on the program because people will say it's a work of art. That this is a general term floating around. They will also say that it's, as you said, fictionalized. But then the makers have not distanced themselves from the real story as much as they should have if they really wanted to present a fictionalized account. Now, it was horrific, not just for me, for the rest of the cockpit and cabin crew, for those passengers who were on board, for their families. It affected a lot of people in the nation, And I think it's only expected. It's along expected lines if so many of them are getting today a little outraged. There are also people who will appreciate, Anubhav Sinha is a uh, well acclaimed filmmaker, and he definitely knows his craft very well. But this is also a grouse I have against him, that if he knows his craft so well, why should he have chosen to, distort so much of what happened over there? That's one thing. Quickly, it's also about the fact that a bulk of the action happened in the cabin. Once we landed at Kandahar, the cockpit crew also was made to sit in the cabin. A lot of terrible incidents were happening over there, but they've not been dealt with as much sensitivity, and the details have not been gone into as much as one would have desired. Then it quickly shifts to the negotiation part, and that I think is again it's a it's a mockery. The way they've shown. From whatever little I know, I've written a book which had a foreword by Mr. Doval. I had the good meeting him once. He launched the book at IIC back in 2014, and also met Mr. Vivek Karchu at Kandahar Airport after we were released, and a few other bureaucrats, people from the Intelligence Bureau when we were debriefed after we came back. So how much seriousness there was, and how much effort goes into whatever they do. We'll never be satisfied with everything that happens in a given situation, but the way this
Yeah.
is
Can I ask you? Yeah,
certainly.
you've used very strong words. You've said that it's a mockery, that truth has been distorted, that justice has not been done. If I had to ask you about one example, something that leaps out at you that you think ये तो बिल्कुल ही झूठ है, what would that be?
We're talking about, obviously, I can only focus on the events shown within the cabin. Um, I can list out actually half a dozen this thing, but let me say one which stands out is the fact that the hostess was slapped. The only person among the crew who was slapped was the junior most flight purser we had, Mr. Satish. He was actually hit on the back of his neck and held by the hair and pushed back into a chair, because I felt that those guys, the hijackers, thought they could do this to him. They were not rough with the girls at all. They weren't rough with me at all. I was frisked at one stage, very, very. Um, Shall I say, they didn't spare any part of my body which was not frisked. But so this is what surprises me, that how could they project that as one of the happenings on board.
Are you offended? One of the criticisms of the series, and then I'll open it up, is that it has quote unquote whitewashed the terrorism, the gravity of the terrorism. It's a wishy washy treatment of the terrorists. What offends you in particular? As a survivor, what did you feel? What is the emotion you'd use to describe what you felt when you watched the series?
The fact that it's a known fact that the might of Indian nation was brought down to its knees, and one can have a debate on that, whether the government failed or was unable to, or did something. But as a nation, we were brought down to knees, and it's you know disheartening to for this to be. I mean, it could also be treated as a subject which can teach us a lesson or two. But I don't know. I somehow feel that the way Mr. Doval has been shown to negotiate with the thing. Now, this is a different interpretation. You could say that director chose to give it, but I've known Mr. Doval, and I'm sure he was very serious about the way things were. We were getting some information about how the negotiations were going on. So all that leaves me a little disappointed that just in that sense has not been done.
So you believe there's a kind of trivialization of the horror of what happened.
Precisely.
Am I summarizing that accurately? Okay. Before I bring Sanjay, who I know has written a long review on X and even got lost his account for what he wrote, Shubhra, let's bring you in. Now the lens that you bring to something that's actually occurred in real life, it's complicated. As a critic, are you looking at the craft? Anil Sharma is looking at this as someone who lived it, and it takes you back to that age-old question: when something is based on real life events, and it's not a documentary. The filmmakers may argue that we've only taken that as a starting point. We're not saying that every moment, every scene here is literally true. But then on the other side, this is a wound in the sort of body politic of the nation, right? It's not a fully healed wound. Many passengers still don't come out and talk about what happened. Anil is one of those rare people today who can. Given that it's generally been critically praised, right? Now all of this noise, so many people upset, does it make you reconsider your praise for the series?
No, it doesn't at all. Can I just preface that by saying that, when we're looking at something that is based on reality, whether it's a web series or a film, it all depends upon what the source material is. Here in this one, it's very, very clearly states upfront, both Anubhav Sinha and his co-writer, that it is based on the account of Captain Devi Sharan, who was piloting, the plane. And one of our most solid journalists, Frinjoy Chaudhary. So I do not imagine that I haven't read the book, so I don't know how true to it. I mean, how true to it that it hews the whole thing. But I did have critique about it. It was not like I praised it fulsomely and wholly. I had caveats, and I can put them out here, and I can also add to that, because I just thought the first four episodes, if you look at it as pure, division of what was happening through till the end, six episodes, the first four were, in so many ways, they were slack. It picks up and it really sort of rescues itself, and in the last two episodes, when things actually are in play. Before that, I think what, in fact, I'm going to be one of those contrarian people who says that, the uh, Anubhav Sinha has not been as sharp or as subversive as he could have been, because he's being very careful when he's putting a finger on, or he's pointing out that there were all kind the multiplicity of agencies that was roaming around in these, milling about in this sort of a kind of a crisis management group. It looked less than a crisis management group than people just figuring out what to do as they were going on. They were like learning on the job. There was the IB, there was the RAW, and there was NSG, and there were all these politicians, and we kept hearing about PM Saab, and we kept hearing about, no, nowhere did they have actually shown that it actually has any idea in their heads. So it is, I feel that it could have been much sharper. It could have been so much more, sort of cutting edge in terms of actually saying, rolling out the fact that it was a complete intelligence failure. It was, and it's still today. I don't even think that even that book has everything in it. I suspect that a lot of it is just going to be completely buried, in people's memories,
So,
because
so,
it was
so
so
you're
hard.
saying, sorry to interrupt you, you're
No,
saying that actually,
I just
yeah.
felt, I just wanted to just complete this thought, Barkha, that, when everybody says that it is real life, yes, all creators are always going to take creative liberties. Yes, but it depends upon how much. And here in this case, you can see that there are some words are being used that would not have been used 25 years ago. Where in the world would journalists wear lanyards with ID card 25 years ago? I don't remember. And that whole, in fact, that if you talk about journalists, that whole segment should have been just basically picked up and thrown out of the series, because it adds nothing. And it just shows, you were
Yeah.
in a newsroom, Maya was in a newsroom, we were all in newsrooms, and none of this kind of obfuscation, not knowing what to do, this kind of, none of this, it is ridiculous. In fact, even when they talk about these two big, Nasiruddin Shah and Pankaj Kapoor, you have these two
Hmm.
great actors in a frame. Those portions are, they could have been fantastic, and I felt that they was one of the weaker parts of the series. So if you really want to critique it, let's get all of
Yeah.
these lenses, right?
Okay. Okay.
So
So basically, what I'm hearing you say is that, in fact, Anubhav Sinha was maybe too careful and some bits were just too caricatured, not getting the tonality right. But that's a very different lens, Sanjay Lazar, from the one that Anil Sharma is looking at it through. And I understand that. Shubhra is looking at it as a movie critic. Anil is looking at it as, I lived this. You are today looking at it as someone who's from the airline, but also a victim of a terror attack that took your family out. And I understand that the sensitivities would be very different. Sanjay, your quick take.
I was shocked
Can
to
we
watch.
unmute Sanjay? Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead, Sanjay, again. Yeah.
thanks. No, I was very much, I'm a victim of a terrorist attack. I was very much in the airline at that time. I was the union leader, and we lived this from the outside. So when watching this
Hmm.
series, I was shocked because it was based on the captain's book and also partly relied on Anil's book, and it doesn't really add up. Frankly, lots of aviation glitches, lots of you know guffaws. I mean, really shocking bloopers by Anubhav. It's a glitzy Bollywood movie, no doubt. Okay, let's
Hmm.
understand. It should have been put, in bold that this is fiction. Please don't believe it. It's only emanated from the thread of a hijack. Look at the Dubai airport. It's a Dubai airfield, mind you. It's an air force base. They're showing a Pakistani army guy who's sitting in an air traffic control tower reading the Quran to the hijackers. I mean, it's a joke. There's so much that didn't happen. And we know that Strope Talbot and Sheikh Maktoum were there. Jaswant Singh was guiding KC Singh outside. And you're telling me a Pakistani army guy is on it whitewashed ISI, it whitewashed Pakistan. And I have on record Pakistani YouTubers and state actors who claim that it was the ISI. Yet this guy goes and makes this. So it's obviously sensationalism, and I think we should take it with a pinch of salt. Missed a lot of us have missed the wood for the trees when we only talk of Shankar, Hari, and Bola and all that. Let's look at the bigger picture. They will try to make our government look like an idiot. Of course, we made mistakes, but we weren't the idiots that we were. They may show us. We've done Kargil. We had other attacks after that, before that. So it's not Pokhran. It's not that.
What was the most egregious part? Or clearly it was egregious for you. What was the most
Very,
egregious
very
mistake you
egregious.
think?
You know
So what do you
the
think was the most egregious mistake that the series makes?
if I spoke on an aviation terms, uh, the aircraft trying to land on a road, which was true, but at 300 feet, he turns 180 degrees and lands on an airport. In political terms, he's interspersed, his fiction shots with Vajpayee ji coming out of 7 RCR, Jaswant Singh and Brijesh ji at a briefing. Egregious. Write fiction, write fictionalized. Don't make it out to be a docudrama. And that's where I felt really hurt. They made Ajit Doval look like a fool. He's our current
Hmm.
NSA. I mean, for God's sake, you may not like the politics of these people, but it doesn't mean that you bring down the entire country. I'm definitely very offended by that. I put out a long tweet that got me blocked, but it's now up again. But you
Yeah.
can look at the
So
aviation aspects.
yeah, so General Katoch, it's important that Sanjay, Anil, Shubhra, none of them actually think that what's making the most noise on social media is the important point to them, which is that these code names, Burger, Bhola, Shankar, MHA documentation from 1999 actually shows, official release from the Ministry of Home Affairs, there it is up on the screen, shows that these were actually the code names. I'm sure Anil will also want to come in on this in a bit, were actually the code names that were used by the hijackers. But somehow this has been made the main issue. What Sanjay and Anil at least are saying, Shubhra is looking at it as craft. What Sanjay and Anil are saying on facts, there are many other problems. This is not the problem. How do you look at it, General Katoch?
Thank you, Barkha. Barkha, the first thing I want to say was that this is a work of fiction. Now, this is the basic problem I have. If you want, don't make a work of fiction on a real life event, and then make people believe that it has happened. It didn't happen that way. I mean, that has been amply brought out. So if it is a work of fiction, the first thing is please don't call it IC814. You can give it some other name. You can base it in Sweden. You can do anything. But then if it's a work of fiction and they put it in very small letters, because, once I came to know that I had to, that I'll be coming on your program,
Yeah.
I saw a little bit of this. And then I work with a bunch of researchers, and 3 of them had seen the whole thing. And I asked them their free and frank opinion. I said, listen, how do you like the series? And not one of them liked it. You see, no, these are individual tastes. Some people may like it, some people may not. That doesn't really matter. But my thing was, because I saw the first part only, I didn't have time to go through the whole thing. I saw the first part. And I think I find this very objectionable. Please don't call it a work of, a work of fiction, and then base it on real life events, and try to make the people believe
But
it. This is one.
but does that
No, now
but
I
does
want to
that
get
mean
on to.
sorry to just to follow up on that, does that mean that nobody can ever make a fictionalized account of a historic event?
No, make a fictionalized account, but it has to be based on some logic. I mean, let me just give you an example. You make a
Okay.
film of this. You make a film of the 71 war, right? And then you have the surrender ceremony, and you change the name of the general who has surrendered from General Niazi to General Dhruv Katoch. Now, you see, what are you doing? You
Yeah.
see,
Yeah.
don't do those
Yeah.
things. Now, we know that these five hijackers, they had pseudonyms. I mean, the film should have brought that out. Everybody knows what the truth is. What is that hijack? This is one.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
as far as that name is concerned, they could have certainly brought it out that the hijackers, these are the fake names. They could have brought it out in some conversation, but they didn't do
Hmm.
that. And I think that was deceitful. That's my point. Is there's an element of deceit in this. Then basically there are 2 points which I feel very strongly about. One, don't run down your institutions. You see, this is what we have got. When some people run down the Indian army, I tell them, listen, we are your army. I'm not somebody else's army. If I'm not good enough, then I'm not. Then what else do you have? Make me better. I don't belong to Pakistan or to China. I belong to the people of India. So if I'm not good enough, then we should do as a society, make me better. This is one. Number two, why are you trying to, give some sort of a character to the terrorists that they are some sweet boys, they're looking after the passengers and, they're giving them chocolates and goodies and all that. Come on. This is the worst scum which is produced. Just a few days, when we look into what happened in Israel in October, when people go and kill 2,000 people, civilians in cold blood, and yet we have people coming out and justifying them. I'm not talking about actions which took place later or earlier, but this
Yeah.
particular action. Don't justify the things which cannot be justified. And here is where I have a
Okay.
grouch with the producer. These people are terrorists. For God's sake, don't glorify terrorism. We have enough problems with terrorism. Don't make them out into some human beings that
Okay.
okay,
Okay.
and all that. That is my point.
Okay. I'm going to put aside Israel and Gaza because it will take us down into a very different conversation. So we'll just park that. But I take your larger point that you believe that the terrorists have, in a way, been romanticized, the kind of Vaseline filter, a diffused filter treatment of them. It's what others have called whitewashing. Maya, all of this is okay. I think everybody is allowed to hate, be offended by, repulsed by, something that someone has made. Should the government be summoning Netflix? That is a different debate, right? I think Anil Sharma, Sanjay Lazar, General Katoch have every right to sit here and say, look, we hated this. We hated this. It was a trivialization of what we have lived. Should the government be summoning Netflix? Any government, not this government, any government.
Simple answer, no, I don't think so. They should not be summoning Netflix or the film director or the people who have written the book. I mean, they should summon Srinjoy as well in that case, or Captain Devi Sharan. I don't know. Like Shubhra said, I've not read the book either, but I sat and watched I binge watched the entire 6 episodes last week. And shortly after that, I went and looked up my own reports on Kandahar. The last time I think I did something, I referenced Kandahar in a piece looking at 10 years of 2611, but the last time I did something in detail on Kandahar was in 2009, 10 years of the anniversary of the hijack, where it's online. It's on the NDTV website. I mean, there's my interviews with Rajesh Mishra and Ajit Doval, your interview with Jaswant Singh, which has been referenced in that show, Dr. Sanjeev Chibbar, the family member who came into that press conference. I have very vivid memories of that week. I think most importantly, because it was the week I had survived an LTTE suicide blast attempt in Colombo. And I had come back to Delhi, and 5 days later, we were thrown into this hijack that had taken place. And even though as newsrooms, we were scrambling at that time to cover this story, I don't think one can, we can talk about whitewashing the Pakistanis or whitewashing the way things unfolded. I don't mean to diminish anybody's personal experience. about a hijack, about the trauma that they go through as individuals, or the families that may have suffered this entire 1 week ordeal. I can simply tell you, as a journalist who was covering that story, I don't think that the show whitewashed either the Pakistani involvement or the competence or lack of competence of the government of India. I think we were all caught unawares. The governments, the public, the citizenry, the families, everybody was caught unawares. And I actually feel that as a technique, the interjecting of real archival footage with the narrative of a fictionalized plot drove that point further. The fact of the Pakistani involvement was made very clear from the first scene, according to me, where the Indian intelligence officer in Kathmandu is actually chasing and following up on a lead that he believes the Pakistanis are engineering a plot in Kathmandu. So I think that was kind of laid bare at the very get-go. It was mentioned in the film that it was only 3 countries in the world, the UAE, Saudi, and Pakistan, that recognized the Taliban, which is why they ended up going to Kandahar. It was made clear that the hijackers themselves felt that Lahore would receive them to take in the fuel, and were upset about the fact that Musharraf said, "No, I'm sorry, I cannot have this landing in Lahore without Jaswant Singh's intervention." We know a lot of those things happened. They did happen in Delhi. We reported on them. So
I will tell you
what happened inside the aircraft besides what they are saying, but you and I both know what was happening in Delhi.
I will share on that note that I was able to get into the back of a Maruti van carrying sandwich boxes for Jaswant Singh and the terrorists and the entire Indian official team that was going to travel to Kandahar. I jumped into it at the gate of Palam Technical Area, managed to reach the tarmac, met with Jaswant Singh, begged him, "Can I please come aboard and report this story?" And of course was sent, rightly so, back to office and told, "Not a chance. We cannot take you to Kandahar." But let us not underplay the enormity of what happened, that there were no easy choices for anybody.
Yeah.
Even the media was criticized. For example, the emotional sort of pressure, the families waiting for news of their loved ones on board of that plane. And a lot of people said, "Oh, did the media do correctly? It tied the government's hands." So a lot of questions for all of us. I want to just play out before I come back to all of you. I know you all have things to say. Ruchi Ghanshyam was an Indian diplomat posted in Islamabad at this time when this was unfolding, and her husband, Mr. Ghanshyam, who was also posted at the High Commission, was in fact sent as the first person to go to Kandahar. Please remember, this was also a time when India did not have any relationship with the Taliban. So life has really turned full circle. I'm going to play out just a short clip of what she is actually sharing with us about a lot of things we don't know or have forgotten. Take a look. IC814, the Indian Airlines plane, gets hijacked. I think many people have forgotten that even after the deal was done, one of the hijackers says, "We have left a present for you, you India, in the plane." And there's complete panic because the suspicion is there's a bomb.
That's when they found this car with dark windows, so they didn't know who it was that was in the car, but the headlights of the car were on. And somebody was showing, bag after bag, which was red in color.
Why did Captain Devi Sharan, who was piloting the plane, why did he take off from Amritsar? When the plane was hijacked, the hijackers brought a blood-stained knife to the flight deck, to the cockpit, and said, "If you do not take off, we will kill a passenger every 10 minutes.
It's a very difficult choice that the pilot must have had.
Why was the plane not stopped in Amritsar somehow, anyhow? And two, when we think of the dreaded terrorists who were released, Masood Azhar, Mushtaq Zargar, Umar Sheikh, who would go on to harm the interests of India, the rest of the world, could something different have been done? This decision to release terrorists.
This was a plane load of our people sitting in a airport in a country with whom we had no relationship, with a regime that we were not all that familiar or friendly with.
The initial demand from the hijackers was to release 36 Pakistanis in Indian jails.
That's true.
36.
Yes.
And $200 million in cash. And then it was whittled down to the release of these three men.
Yes. Absolutely.
Terrorists.
Absolutely.
So you think of what the demands were, what happened, how many of these details we've forgotten. And in the time we've been talking, we now get an update, Sanjay and Anil, this will particularly be important to you, that Netflix will now have to give the real names of the 5 hijackers in the opening. And I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I haven't seen the series, but if the series did fail to explain that these were code names and the real names were something else, then that is a inaccuracy. It's a factual, or it's an incomplete account of things. Shubhra, you wanted to come in on that? We've just had this update. Shubhra, can we unmute Shubhra, please?
Yeah. Yes, I just wanted to add, when I heard you say this, and I've been reading about this stuff for the last 3-4 days on, on X and everywhere else, that there are people with opinions and who haven't really seen the series. When the negotiations are happening, the actor who plays I think the NSA says very clearly, he says, we know who you are, and he names the name. He says, tum apne ko kuch bhi bula lo, we know exactly who you are, and he names the name. So it was not as if these people did not know who they were dealing with. And there is absolutely no way on earth that we could have been whitewashing. Whitewashing is a word that I think it's very easily in play when people think that they are going to be seeing something which is not in consonance with their views or with what they believe should be a good thing or should be something that show India in good light. Now, my only thing with that is that if you start going down that path, it's a primrose path and there is really no stopping that. I have been part of the CBFC for some years, some years ago, and there was this first thing is like India in bad light or we in bad light or some community in bad light, don't show it. So in that case, what are we going to do? That's one. And that's the other thing is it's very clear that there was the bloodstained knife had been used to slit the throat of somebody, a passenger. I mean, how do you slit the throat of a passenger while whitewashing it? It's a little bit of a,
Okay, but just to argue it for a moment from the other side, and again, I'm the only person here who hasn't seen the series, along with General Katoch, who's seen a little bit of it. If the real names and the real identities of the hijackers are never depicted, isn't that potentially misrepresentative to a generation, Shubhra, not you, me, Maya, Sanjay, Anil, and General Katoch, who know the story, but to a generation that I'm telling you, I work with a young team. I have to tell them what was IC814, who is Masood Azhar, who is Omar Sheikh, who is Daniel Pearl. You have to tell an entire generation this. So I think it's fair to say, Sanjay, that the real names should be there. And if they're there, that's an improvement. Sanjay Lazar?
Yes, definitely, Barkha. I read this just before I came on your show. 2 things that Netflix is committed. One is they'll be more sensitized to Indian concerns going further, and they would put the names. But I also tweeted that, not only the names, there should be a big, the disclaimer is so small in 0.6 font, and the book accreditations are 12 font. They should have said fiction, simple. So people don't get, like you rightly said, there are young kids today, and I've seen on Twitter, who are replying, you mean this didn't happen this way? Or isn't this the truth? Or wasn't Vajpayee, and I'm not saying we didn't do wrong. We did mess up at some point, but let's not make like Shubhra says, we can't have everything primroses. But the ISI wasn't blameless, so let's not. Anil will testify. They blindfolded every passenger and they beat them. Where in the movie do they show it? I've seen the series twice. I've read all 3 books, and I've spoken to crew in these last 5 days, and I don't see any of that coming out. Even Sharan's book. Even Sharan's book is not, honestly.
Let's bring in Anil. I'll come to you right after that. Anil, can you talk a little bit? Because I know, again, not to push any trigger buttons. I'm sure these are things you don't want to remember, or you've written everything you wanted to in your book. But when Sanjay says that the horror of what you all went through is not captured here, right? In some ways, I think Ruchi Ghanshyam's very polite book captures a lot of it in much more graphic detail, including this threat, which I didn't know. I used to keep wondering, why did the pilot not make a set of different options? But that there was an actual threat to kill a passenger every 10 minutes. I have to say, I discovered that only from Ambassador Ruchi Ghanshyam's book. I didn't know that. So there's a lot, and I was someone covering the story. So Anil, what do what kind of horror did you all experience that you think this series has failed to capture? This blindfolding is one example Sanjay Lazar has given.
If I before I answer that, can I raise 2 points? One, I'm very happy that Netflix has responded positively by including the names and whatever the method of government intervention was. I mean, you could praise it or you could criticize it. It's a good step forward. And when the issue of the book being utilized for it's based on, let's say the book is based on the film is based on the captain's book. Now, it's also very interesting. This morning, the captain has put out I think it's in shorts or something, that there is an inaccuracy in the fact that he went down to do the plumbing. Now, you have a gentleman on whose book the series makers say it's based, but he himself is now compelled to correct the impression that it was actually the flight engineer along with another passenger who went down to try and repair the toilet pipes and see if it could be sort of restored to a semblance of cleanliness. Now, to come back to your question, the kind of horror we all sort of went through, it came in bits and pieces. Like somebody would like to ask me what happened, what was your first reaction? My first reaction was that probably it's not going to last more than a day or day and a half, because that's the maximum any, a lot of hijack attempts were made from Delhi as a base, because it's politically so convenient to do something like that. Most of the aircraft were taken to Pakistan. That's also well known. And we have on the panel people like you and Maya who have done extensive study. I'm very impressed with that fact that she was returning from a blast in Colombo when she was still doing the story. Like, you've done an in-depth investigation of all these episodes. Now, we thought that it's going to end in a day and a half, and we'll be back, at the most. We didn't know that we had gone to Amritsar. This was something we just surmised, based on the uneven runway that we had landed on. We didn't know that we had gone to Lahore. We knew we had gone to Alminat because I, along with Satish, lifted the dead body of Ripon and placed it on the slipper. That's where it starts sinking in, that these Johnnies were a lot more serious or ferocious than anything witnessed before in the history of Indian aviation. And then, when we landed over there in Kandahar, they started issuing threats that, okay, your guys seem to be on a Christmas holiday, but we are not here to feed you and all that. And the 24 hours, they never got us even a drop of water. I mean, they were trying to instill a lot of fright in us. Now, if I may include that bit about Antakshari and all that, frankly, I didn't see Antakshari being played where I was seated along with the rest of the cabin crew, and the cockpit few rows ahead of me. But they did invite people to start sharing jokes and, recite a poem or two. And I've always said that this was their way of alternating between horror and humor. If you try and pin down a guy very strongly, very violently, sooner or later he's going to rebel. I'm sure General Katoch can dwell on that a little more. And then it started becoming very clear. Then when the day 29th, when they said that we are releasing some more people, and the same people were sent back, and they were pushed back.
So it was like it's like a mind game. That's actually what you're saying.
And finally on the 30th, that horror has not been even remotely visited in the film, the series. When they said on 30th that we're going to start shooting, and if we shoot one, we shoot all. And there
Yeah.
was massive. So I think that those kind of terrible moments have been glossed over for reasons best known to the series makers.
What is the most, before I go to Maya, who I know has a point, what is the most frightening memory that you carry with you, Anil, from those days? Is it of
The,
being, is it when you were bodily frisked, as you said, no part of you was spared? Is it the blindfolding? Is it when they said, if we shoot one, we'll shoot you all? Like, what is it that you carry, when you go to sleep at night, you can't get out of your head even all these years later?
I recorded in my book also. After we had lifted and placed the body of Vipin Katel outside, we were flying from Alminaz to Kandahar, and it was a longish um, sector, if I put it like that.
Yeah.
And I was unable to sleep, obviously. I've never before seen anything like this, but I also knew that I was at the mercy of five very fiercely indoctrinated terrorists. And I was
Yeah.
keeping myself awake. People were generally falling asleep left, right, to the left and right of me. And I seemed a little fidgety. I'm just coming to that when you said that incident with that they frisked me. I was a little fidgety. I was playing around with a coat and trying to hang it on the seat ahead of me, and I was trying to read an in-flight magazine. So that's when this guy Shankar came and says, "What is your problem?" मैंने कहा कुछ नहीं. कहता आप आ गए ये मुझे लेके गए, and then after, as I told you, they frisked each part of my body, each part of my attire, and then he said कि आप जो हरकतें कर रहे हैं उससे आप तो औरों को तो पता नहीं, आप बड़े मुश्किल में पड़ जाएंगे. Immediately it sunk in, and
Yeah.
it was a enclosed area in the J class and everything. So that was,
Yeah.
personally, that was the most frightful moment for me.
Yeah. You didn't think you were going to make it out alive.
And then this feelings came in 3-4 days later. When we were there, you could say fifth or
Yeah.
sixth day. I mean, I really
Yeah.
thought that whether I would arrive in Delhi alive or in a coffin.
Yeah. Disturbing to hear all these years later. I can't imagine how it is for you to carry those memories and to think of Rupin Katyal. He'd been married for 20 days. His wife did not even know that he had been killed. So again, I mean, I think we all carry these wounds. And Maya, you wanted to come in. This update we have from Netflix that the real names will be given. I think that's a reasonable ask. I didn't actually know that the series made no reference to the real names. Maya?
No, but I think Shubhra clarified. Like towards the later episodes, they do start. I mean,
Oh, I
in the
see.
negotiations, he does refer to doctor, I think, by his real name, or chief, or one of them by their real name, and that guy is a bit stunned that they actually know who
Yeah.
they are. So that there is that. No, I do think it's fair that by the end of it, like in every dramatized version of real events, typically the audience waits at the very end to know how everything ultimately unfolded and what the reality
Yeah.
was, and there's always a little note. So I'm glad that Netflix is doing that. Perhaps that was a gap, but I want to just come in on something else, and perhaps this is the point that I'm overstepping on Shubhra's terrain, but I think good cinema, which is, or good fiction or fictionalized entertainment, which is essentially what IC814 is, takes from real life, very often real incidents. I mean, the number of movies there are on World War II or the Vietnam War, or these things happened. So there is something to be said for being too literal, or for good cinema to ensure that whether it's the combination of audio, video, script, sound, everything
Hmm.
comes together, and there's a lot that's there. If you It doesn't need to all be spelt out so definitively to say that. I mean, I think when the hijackers refer to themselves as Shankar and Bhola, the expression, for example, on Vijay Varma's face is enough to give the viewer the impression that he knows that this is an alias. I mean, they're not, nobody watching it thinks that those are their real names. I mean, you can't get away thinking
But do
that.
you think do you think just to argue it from the other side, you think that's because we know the story?
No, Not at all, Barkha. I mean, we could have been watching something else, but I'm saying that's good craft as well, right? That the expression on the actor's face gives that away. The way the script, the way the dialogue is delivered gives it away. I think there's a lot to be said for that. I mean, I actually have other issues, which is that, Mutawakil has this really weird way of speak. I mean, I didn't realize Mutawakil would know Hindi, Urdu, and speak it in a non-Afghan accent. I have quibbles like that. Vijay Verma didn't grow a stubble in 8 days of being on the flight as the pilot. I'm like, these are continuity issues for me, which have a problem. My biggest problem, actually, I had two really major problems. One is, as Shubhra said, I think the struggles that the government faced about what decisions to be taken were kind of glossed over as, ye coalition politics hai and coalition nahi manegi. It wasn't that simple. That, I think, was artistic license I wish would have actually been fleshed out a little more. And the second, as Shubhra said, look, this idea that the editor of this newspaper is referring to the intelligence officer as uncle really pissed me off, because we as journalists were taking calls not based on some uncle in the intelligence office, but taking our own decisions on, listen, should we say this? Can we say this? Should we not? And blaming the media was always a convenient scapegoat. Oh, the media put pressure. I mean, of course, 10 years later, they said the left met with the families. So, which is because Brinda Karat met with them. The left put pressure on them. It was either left liberals or the media. The two famous.
I think it's fair to say, as you've pointed out, Maya, that nobody had any good options. Like, even for the media in a national security issue, it's always a dilemma how to cover this in a way that that the state, not the government, that the state's security is not compromised, that lives are not lost. That I think we're all. Okay, now everybody's wanting to come in. I saw Anil's hand go up, Shubhra's hand go up, and I'll give General Katoch a word, and then we'll start taking concluding comments. General Katoch, sir.
Barkha, I've just got 2 points, from the conversation which have taken place. 2 points came out. One, it was an intelligence failure, and something about the crisis management group. Now, when a hijacking takes place, obviously at some element there has been an intelligence failure, but it will happen. These hijackings have taken place all across the world, even in the United States, Canada, everywhere.
Sure.
So the intelligence does reasonably well, but sometimes well. So I really won't go into that bit. I think when we are looking at the crisis management group, I think the basic flaw, as far as the whole system was concerned, was those 45 minutes which were spent in Amritsar. Everything should have been done there. It was not done there because we didn't have our systems in place. Let's face it. I hope that has been rectified now, because once the aircraft has gone to Kandahar, I'm afraid your options are over. You don't have those options, So let's understand that. We had that time at 45 minutes when the plane was in our territory under our control. We didn't execute that well. That, I feel, is the failure. And that, once we understand that failure, I hope we rectify it. Barkha.
Yes, absolutely. Which is why I kept trying to ask Ambassador Ghanshyam, why did the plane take off from Amritsar? But her answer again points to the complexity of the thing, that the pilot felt that passengers would be killed, that there was an actual threat to kill a passenger every 10 minutes. So honestly, I don't sit in any easy judgment on the episodes that unfolded during this hijacking. I do need to start taking last comments. Sorry, General Katoch, you tried to say something?
No, just one small point. You see,
yes,
it was not the captain's decision. This should have been done from the ground. No, you don't put that blame on the captain.
Absolutely.
That he cannot take that decision.
No, absolutely.
And I'm afraid they failed. It is not the captain's failure. It was the ground failure.
No. I was not blaming the captain.
I just wanted to say that out. Yes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, there have been so many thoughts about why couldn't you just put a fire engine in front of the plane? Couldn't you have just stalled that plane from takeoff in Amritsar? So many questions that I don't know will remain unanswered. Maya, you have a question to add to that? And then Shubhra.
Mishra, in fact, in my interview with Rajesh Mishra in 2009, he says to me that the plan was to actually get this Bowser, which is what fills the fuel, with some commandos in it, and just go and park at the nose of the plane and get the commandos to shoot the tires, is what he says. But I mean, so there were those plans. But again, even this thing about killing a passenger. I don't think it was specified to every 10 minutes, but the fact that they were going to start killing passengers if the captain didn't take instructions from the hijackers was depicted in the show as well. So, I mean,
Okay. And by the way, Ms. Ghanshyam's book actually reveals that even after the release of the terrorists,
yeah.
there was a fear that a live bomb had been left behind, and they kept trying to look for that bomb. So this was a very complicated situation, and we must remind ourselves that India had no relationship
The
with
bomb is in the
Afghanistan.
show as well. The bomb is in the show
Okay.
as well.
Okay. All right. Shubhra, go ahead, Shubhra.
Upon
I can't hear Shubhra. Yeah. Yeah. Start again,
can you
Shubhra.
hear me?
Sorry.
Okay, Vic,
Yes.
so I just want to very quickly pick on a couple of things that have been said, and also, that what the point that I made about that whole fiasco about how the journalists were, uh, seen just fumbling. It just wasn't at all the way things are in newsrooms. So clearly, this crew has no idea, and I don't know whether Srinjoy. I mean, part of it was how much of it was he on set? Did he actually look at it? Because if any journalist had, they would have been the first people to say, please don't do this, right? The other one, which I have a problem about getting two stalwarts, Nasir and Pankaj, and give them so little to do. And the way that they do, how do you show urgency? You show these people walking from one place to the other. All they do in the first 2 or 3 episodes, when they're actually supposed to be, brass tacking what happened and what should be happening, instead of all of this, you have this false sense of urgency with all this background music, which I thought was such a waste. Also, the larger point, when we don't agree with anything that we see, whether it's a fictionalized form of reality or whether it is a documentary is different from a docudrama. There is a difference. I think we need to really understand that there is a difference, that there will be some things that the director and the writers will add for dramatic, sort of up the dramatic quotient. And also, because of the fact that we have such thin skins when it comes to depicting anything that we could be potentially this thing offended by. You seen the credits that open our films, and they don't even say inspired by. They don't even say that. They will say loosely inspired by. They will make it so difficult to actually say based on. How many times
Right.
have you actually heard something say based on? They will say inspired. They will put quote marks around it, because nobody wants to, get into this whole situation where you do a fictionalized form, and then the next thing you know, there are 500,000 people who haven't seen your work, and they're all basically just fulminating. This is
Right.
basically the problem.
Right. Before I give Anil the last word, Sanjay, we've had a sort of textured set of responses here. You clearly were pretty pissed off when you watched the series, and you gave us a few examples. With the addition of the names in the disclaimer, does that change your perspective, or was that not even the main point for you?
That was not even the main point for me, Barkha. I found 57 faults. I've put it in a series of 10 tweets. 57 critical difficulties. I would call this Mission Anubhav, Asambhav. This is Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible in Hindi. That's about it. He's taken an orange aircraft with Indian Airlines. They should have just put it that way. Then Anubhav Sinha has a winner. But if you're trying to depict what happened 25 years ago, I'm sorry you missed the mark. Just by taking out bits and pieces of the book, you didn't do justice to
aviation inaccuracies, or
factually, the captain has just come out and said, I didn't go to clean the toilet. That is in the flight engineer's book. That is in 3 other books. How can a pilot go and repair a sandas ka faucet? Tell me. I mean, a faucet of a crapper that is stuck. Do you expect us an ALTP pilot? No, he didn't do it. A lot of this stuff that Anubhav says he did, and I don't think Srinjoy did it either. It's Netflix's Mandarins obviously doing it, because even their book doesn't match this movie. That's my point. Be that as it may, it's going to make millions. It's number one today, and this conflict is just going to add fuel. And he's, they're
that's
laughing.
the irony.
That's about it.
That's the irony, right? Yeah. But Anil, as the survivor of this ordeal, we must give you the last word, sir. Please go ahead.
3 points broadly. One, to refer to Maya's this thing, that it's very clear when you look at the commander's face, that expression says that these names are aliases. But everyone will not be as discerning and perceptive as Maya is. That's the point. As you said, I was watching a show yesterday. There was an actress called Ravira Bhardwaj on one of the shows, and she says, "I didn't know this. Now I'm coming to know. That." So, if people in the existing generation are saying that, think about the kind of damage that it would have done to people coming later. Now, to mention Shubhra's thing, when she said that the journalists have been shown in poor light, and some of it just doesn't exist. Sanjay pointed out something, another inaccuracy which he's not mentioned, that when the other potential hijackers boards up and he says, "Can I have some water?" The hostess takes out a 200 milliliter bottle and gives it. And Sanjay's done enough research. He says it was invented much later. So those kind of inaccuracies, and as I'm sure as days go by, more inaccuracies will tumble out of the cupboard and will impact that. But yes, we need to discuss. We need to today. Certainly, some people will benefit from. I'm very touched by General Katoch's observations, and he's been very objective that what is wrong has to be called wrong. You cannot say no because they've shown me assaulted. As I said, they've shown me with blood all over, and that was probably another stupid attempt if I put to marginalize my role to suit who I really don't know, and I don't care also. But we need to discuss this. We need to have them come. I think also the beauty of Indian democracy, Indian nation, that we can discuss. We have people, three of you intelligent journalists sitting over here, and letting people like us know a little more about the show. So it's been a good development.
I will say that all military content does need a sign off from the military. I'm sure everybody knows that. And, there are sensitivities. I'm not a great fan of governments telling movie makers what to do and what not to do. But equally, I empathize with the fact that people live through this. And they're watching their own lives on screen. And I can only imagine what that must feel like if you don't feel that it's been accurately portrayed. So Anil, particularly to you and to Sanjay, as survivors and victims of terrorism, my heart does go out to both of you. We leave it there. Thank you, Shubhra, Maya, General Katoch, Sanjay Lazar, and Anil Sharma, survivor of the IC814 hijacking. Thank you for talking to us and to our audience. Thank you, and see you soon. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.